No, thank you all very much for being here. It is truly a pleasure to see all of you, to see this much interest in animal agriculture. From where I stand, agriculture was America's first and its most today enduring industry. And so I want to thank all of you for being here and showing your interest in that. I thought I would start today. I was invited to talk about the 58th quadrennial presidential election. It's been quite something, hasn't it? I thought I would start today with some children's literature. As many of you know or might know, the now presumptive GOP nominee, Donald John Trump, has written 12 books. All bestsellers, by the way. What you didn't know, perhaps, is that he has also written a children's book. It's entitled, Winners Aren't Losers. And I'm going to say right up front, forgive the irreverence. It came naturally with me. But I want to read from Winners Aren't Losers. Compliments to Jimmy Kimmel, for those of you who follow late night television. Winners aren't losers. They're winners like me. A loser's a loser. Which one will you be? Winners do deals, and winners get rich, while sad little losers just sit there and bitch. That dog over there, that dog is a loser, and frankly, I pity it. That dog did bad deals. That dog is an idiot. And look at poor Mr. Bear. He must feel like a loser, valeting that 2006 PT Cruiser. That lobster's a loser. Throw him in the pot. I like a lobster who doesn't get caught. Those losers are failures who get nothing done. Just do what I do, and you will be number one. Now, here are some frogs that I do not like at all. We must kick these frogs out and then build a wall. Oh, the places you go on your yacht, on your plane, with your suits from Milan and your wives from Ukraine. Oh, the buildings you'll build. Oh, the wealth you'll amass. And all those people running around kissing your ass. There are two kinds of people. Which one will you be? A loser like them, or a winner like me? With that, I say to you, I have never seen, in my now 17 years in Washington, D.C., an election quite like this. It is an election that someone said yesterday is going to be an unpopularity contest. It is an election where both presumptive candidates, although it's not over for Hillary yet, I don't think, both presumptive candidates are reaching historic unpopularity levels. The numbers are just staggering. It is truly a made-for-TV event. I believe the three presidential debates that will be forthcoming, probably starting in October, will set all-time television viewership levels. I'm sure that network executives are wiping the drool off their chin with a bath towel. The key questions, I think, as we move forward, if you want to look at this race, perhaps some of you just want to turn away. Can Hillary duplicate the Obama coalition turnout? That turnout, I worked two campaigns in the early 2000s, a congressional campaign in Arkansas and the 2004 Bush-Cheney campaign in Ohio. And the micro-targeting and the turnout that the Obama team was able to master was just overwhelming. I don't believe she'll be able to duplicate that turnout, which is why I don't think you can automatically discount the candidacy of Donald Trump. But I think that'll be the key question for her. For Trump, it's obviously, can he add enough support to his natural constituency? Not entirely sure what his natural constituency is, though I would say, by virtue of the fact that he has received some 2.5 million more votes at this point in the primary season than did Mitt Romney, again, it should not be underestimated. Whether your neighbor wants to admit or not, whether the folks you run into at the supermarket want to admit or not, there are people who Trump is resonating, and resonating very loudly with. And then I think finally it's just turnout, right? Everything we read today, like I just said, it's an unpopularity contest. Folks are disgusted. Will that level of disgust translate into a motivator or an inhibitor for people to actually go out and vote? We shall see. But that certainly will have consequences for what Congress looks like, the least of which what happens with the run for the White House. As I mentioned earlier, the Trump effect is very, very real. I should point out that now that the televised theatrics that were the debates are over, the GOP debates, there were 12 total, amassed 186 million viewers. The 9 Democratic debates, 72 million. So you can see it was over double the per debate viewership for the GOP debates as opposed to the Democratic debates. The advantages going in for both sides, I think, are this. I had Republicans here, I marked it out, Trump, because I think the party itself is still trying to feel its way. Republicans currently hold 31 governor's mansions. They control 68 of the 99 state legislative bodies. You know, why does Nebraska have to be different? We could have had a nice 100 if not for Nebraska. They have a majority in the House and a majority in the Senate. As some of you may know, their majority in the House, though they don't always act like it, is the largest GOP majority in the House of Representatives since 1928. So in modern times, this is the largest GOP majority in the House. Obviously, the challenges, and you know, it doesn't matter if it was another Republican or the fact that it's Trump, in my opinion. The challenges are always going to be the changing demographics of the nation for Republicans. Women, Hispanics, and then can the party unify? For the Democratic nominee, most likely Hillary Rodham Clinton, I mean, clearly her advantages are those last two that I just talked about. What's dragging the Republican Party is obviously a boon to the Democratic Party, but she will have challenges as well. It's never easy following a two-term president from your own party. That's not something that historically is actually commonplace. Certainly President Bush was elected after 2 terms of Ronald Reagan, but historically, if you look back, that is a hard task. I think she will face challenges, as we've seen over the past couple of days with some of her comments on coal, and in particular, I think she has a blue-collar problem that is acutely open to serious concern for her candidacy with white males. And then, you know, she obviously will play up her experience, and she will follow the tact of slicing and dicing the demographics, the changing demographics of the nation, to micro-target those groups that she feels like she needs to turn out in high numbers in order for her to be elected. In the Senate, the current makeup is 54 Republicans, 46 Democrats. Half of the Republican seats up this time are in states that Obama won. Those key races, if you live in these states, in between your college football and NFL viewing this fall, it will be nothing but wall-to-wall advertising. Wisconsin, Illinois, Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, Ohio, Nevada, Florida, and Colorado. But then in 2018, there are 33 seats that will be up for election, and 25 of those are held by Democrats. So Republicans are clearly at the disadvantage now in the Senate, but that pendulum swings right back the other way come 2018. So as we get ready for January 20th, 2017, that is in the Constitution, for all of you Constitution scholars, the day when our president will be inaugurated. What will be the questions facing this industry with a new administration and a new Congress? And I'm going to get into my remarks here with indulgence that I ask for from you, because I'm at the end going to speak fairly frank and fairly candid to all of those who care about animal agriculture. But before then, let's just think about some of the top line questions this industry needs to ask. What do you want out of the next USDA secretary? What backgrounds and qualifications should that next Secretary of Agriculture have? In the last 40 years, we've had 4 secretaries that have been House members, 3 that have been governors, 3 that have been state agriculture directors. So what do you want? What does the industry want? And if the industry has thoughts on what that candidate should be, who that candidate should be, what their profile, background, and experience should be, I encourage you to come forward with that early, in a very public way. A couple of more inside the Beltway questions here, but certainly things I think we can all think about. Should the FDA Commissioner, the FDA Deputy Commissioner for Foods and Veterinary Medicine be a political appointee? I didn't mean to give Mike Taylor a promotion there, but I think that's a key question. The FDA increasingly, especially with implementation of the Food Safety Modernization Act, is becoming incredibly more relevant, incredibly more important in our day-to-day conduct of business. It oversees 80% of the food supply, feed, animal drugs. Do we have an opinion about who that next FDA Deputy Commissioner should be? If so, be public about it and come forward now. Is it time to modernize USDA's meat and poultry inspection system? I just mentioned the Food Safety Modernization Act. Inherent therein is the question of, is it time to do the same with the equivalent system at USDA? I'm sorry, not equivalent, but a similar system at USDA. FSMA was a recognition that food safety laws needed to be updated after 70 years of being on the books. Federal Meat Inspection Act, 110 years old. Poultry inspection nearing 60 years old. Is it time to modernize? And then something that I'm asked about almost on a daily basis. Another farm bill is due in 2018. Will another farm bill be possible? I don't know that I'm prepared to answer that or offer my view today, but it's a question we have to ask. And we have to ask it sooner rather than later. Jim Webster just caught me out in the hall and said, have you ever seen candidates speak less about agriculture? It's as if it doesn't even matter. I look forward to some questions on that. I have my own views. But I think it begs the question now of, will it be possible? Everybody has talked about the growing rural versus urban divide. There are 34 congressional districts in the House of Representatives, of which 50% or more is considered rural. 155 congressional districts are considered 95% or more urban. Sure, we have to. It's essential that we reinvigorate the rural-urban coalition that has carried farm bills for at least 40 years. But I have to tell you something. I sat in the whip's office for a handful of meetings in the House during the 2014 Farm Bill. I'm not proud of the fact that that farm bill, for the first time ever, failed on the floor of the House and failed by a wide margin. But what we learned from that and what we saw from that is that we're also struggling to connect with our rural lawmakers. Everybody wants to make a big deal about this rural-urban divide and how we must bridge the gap. That's true. But a lot of House members we lost on that first Farm Bill vote were from Alabama, Texas, Mississippi, Georgia. You just can't place it on the laps of urban denizens and city dwellers. Perhaps we also need to refocus on making sure our neighbors in rural America understand the importance of what it is we do. What can we expect from the Trump administration, and then what can we expect from the Clinton administration? I think from a Trump administration, you can expect some unconventional cabinet picks. Though I will say, I think with Trump it goes like this. I'm pro-business. I'm pro-military. I'm pro-American, America first, right? Everybody saw his foreign policy speech last week. Whether you like him or not, America first, make America great again, terrific sound bites. I mean, from top-line messaging, terrific. So pro-business, pro-America, everything else, I think, is up for negotiation. I really do. He has gone over almost a year into his campaign, and frankly has not tethered himself to really any sort of finite policy details. Now, some people say, shame Trump. But to me, what that says is it will maximize his flexibility once he's in the Oval Office. I think he will be transactional. I think he will cut deals. Perhaps his administration may do something that the previous two haven't, and that's unify Congress. He may unify Congress just out of sheer vitriol towards the Trump administration. But I really do think he's going to get the best people, in his mind, to serve in his cabinet, and imagine a USDA that sets the agenda. Imagine a Secretary of Agriculture that develops an agenda for rural America, for agriculture, and that is able to pursue that with vigor. For a Clinton administration, I think conventional wisdom says it will likely track along a more conventional route. I think it will be very much White House centralized. It will be, micro-disciplined, perhaps micromanaged. I'm not trying to cast in a pejorative way whether that's bad, but I think it will be something we're probably in this town more accustomed to. I did take a look during her time as United States Senator on the pieces of legislation in which she inscribed her name as a sponsor. She sponsored the Downed Animal Protection Act, the Single Food Safety Agency Act, Food Safety Administration, the Meat and Poultry Pathogen Reduction and Enforcement Act, Country of Origin labeling for all dairy products, including processed dairy products, and the At-Risk Consumer Protection Through Food Safety Labeling Act. That legislation would have required an at-risk label on products that are consumed by seniors, pregnant women, those whose immune systems are potentially vulnerable. I've got 7 minutes left, and I'm going to close with the theme of this conference. Action, please. Action. Not dialogues, not conversation. There's a whole, look, I'm a for-hire, multi-client, paid hack called a lobbyist. Far be it for me, and I don't mean to pick on other industries. But one of the just staggering things that I've noticed in my tenure here in Washington is the development of an entire industry that is paid to facilitate conversation, facilitate dialogue. Imagine that. What I've seen is probably too much of that, too much dialogue, too much conversation, action please. So how can we as an industry develop action steps and execute upon those moving forward? Institutions today, institutions of all types, trade associations, economic think tanks, medical research, and especially the scientific community, are rapidly losing credence, especially with younger consumers. I don't know for those of you who saw this, but in January of this past year, the Pew Research Center and AAAS, American Association for the Advancement of Science, released some really interesting polling entitled Public and Scientist Views on Science and Society. And what it did is it detailed the gap between the public and the scientific community in what was believed to be fact. There was a 50-point gap on the safety of genetically modified organisms, a 42-point gap on using animals for research, a 40-point gap on whether foods grown with pesticides are safe to eat, a 33-point gap on whether humans have evolved. In Washington, I can understand that to some degree. And a 20-point gap on whether children should be vaccinated against measles, mumps, and rubella. A 20-point gap on whether kids should get their vaccines. Why is this? And what can the current election cycle tell us about this? The degrading confidence in institutions, I believe, at least in part, is attributed to the fact that political correctness has hit a wall. And I will stand behind that comment. I think political correctness has hit a wall with Democrats and Republicans. Because what political correctness has become is this political precautionary principle. Everything has to be sanitized and sterilized and scripted and rehearsed. And we're so scared to say what we actually might think. Look, we can be respectful. I do believe humans have evolved. And I do believe we're at a point in society where we celebrate diversity. We embrace it. A Muslim woman watches the three things dearest to me in my life, which are my children. And my wife and I came home, this was probably 2 years ago, and they were so excited to share with us the fact that Yenny pulled out her prayer rug and showed them how she practiced her religion. Now, that doesn't mean that, to me, the best part about that is my children, not through some edict, not through some cultural lecture, learned a different religion in the very purest sense from a woman that we entrust with the lives of our 3 children. So I don't think that political correctness now must mean that we just don't say anything at all. I will say, particularly from agriculture and animal agriculture, if we don't start vigorously opposing what we're told to say, what's polite to say, then we automatically lose. We adopt a go-along to get-along attitude. I think that enforceable political correctness has bred mistrust. And it's bred the mistrust of these very institutions that we so often hold in reverence. But the science says this. But my economic study says this. The collateral damage from all of this has been a growing distrust. What can we do about it? This is the action part. First, start acting like it's 2016 and not 1995. What do I mean by that? Moms across America on Earth Day, April 22nd, launched a billboard campaign in 191 U.S. locations for 30 days. Still up. Our families get better when they eat organic is the message on 191 billboards spread throughout the United States. How many of your organizations have done something similar to that? Anybody? I know, I get it. I hear it all the time. We represent a number of corporations, many of which you're familiar with, many of which are probably represented in this room. I might be in trouble. Shareholders, corporate social responsibility, officers, they would never let you do that, right? Away. There are means by which you can. What I meant by play like it's 2016 and 1995 is this. The rules have changed. And I think you're obligated to your members, to farmers, to the future of agriculture to play by those new rules. Ag America and Protect the Harvest super PACs are two of the smallest super PACs in America. However, they are the two largest, if not only, super PACs representing agriculture. I know, super PACs. Sounds scary, right? Guess what? Moms across America aren't scared. Food and Water Watch isn't scared. The Environmental Working Group isn't scared. Friends of the Earth isn't scared. We need to step up. We need to think about everything we do differently. Communications, essential. Ask yourself, are your communicators and public policy advocates meeting on a daily basis? Or are they 6 doors down the hallway from each other and don't talk but once a week during staff meetings? Your communicators need to start acting like lobbyists. And I'm not ashamed to say that in the least bit. Your communicators need to start meeting with press secretaries in Congress. They need to start meeting with communications directors from allied organizations. And it can't be some intermittent one-off meeting. It needs to be regular. It needs to be frequent. I'm going to close with this, and I look forward to all of your questions, all of them. If we don't have enough time, I'll stick around afterwards and answer them. And it's a speech, right? You got to close with a quote. Although, as you can tell from this speech, hopefully, I don't always stick to the script. John Wayne said, "Courage is being scared to death, but saddling up anyway." Saddle up, folks. Thanks.
All right, so as we draw close to the dinner hour, I do want to take a couple questions, because Tyson, as you can tell, is eminently quotable and has no shortage of insights into what's going on here, in the swamp, so to speak. So, questions? Raise your hand. One of the Aggies will bring the mic to you. Make sure you speak from the mic. And as always, remember there is a difference between a question, a speech, and a filibuster.
I promise I won't filibuster.
Anyone?
Come on.
We'll take Super Tom over here on my left.
Thanks, Tyson. Let me preface my question saying I represent the chicken industry, and we're bipartisan. We don't have any extreme left wings or extreme right wings.
How
Just
long
delicious,
have you been
juicy
saving that
wings.
one?
It's all in the breast, right?
But my question is, obviously, trade is extremely important to animal agriculture
Sure.
and agriculture in general. We've heard a lot of the rhetoric on the campaign trail. In your opinion, under a Trump or a Clinton presidency, what would be the outlook for trade in either of those administrations?
Initially dim. I said initially, though. Look, it is not unprecedented for multilateral trade agreements to be renegotiated. It's not unprecedented for multilateral trade negotiations to take, 3-4 years to be submitted to Congress. That just happened under this administration with the Korean, Colombian, and Panamanian trade agreements. In particular with Korea, I know personally there were elements of that were changed. Dim initially. I certainly think both candidates have voiced very clearly their objections. That doesn't mean objections can't be, overcome or resolved. But I'm going to level with you straight up here. Initially, it'll be a tough go the first year. And it's a tough go also because, you're going to have to populate entirely new administration. From the U.S. Trade Representative to the Commerce Secretary to the Agriculture Secretary, right? And that takes time.
Question from the middle.
Hi. Thank you for your talk.
My pleasure.
You talk about political correctness as kind of an impediment to saying what needs to be said or doing, because this is about action, right? Doing what needs to be done. I was wondering if you could maybe give some examples or speak a bit about what you think this industry needs to say or needs to do that we're prevented from doing because of this impediment.
Yeah, sure. So, I had I'll answer that in a couple ways. The first is growers should not feel intimidated. Growers should not feel threats such that they are coerced into going along to get along, which is what I said earlier, based on production practices. Some of you may know I represented a small but mighty vanguard of egg farmers a couple of years ago that raised their objections to amendments being proposed to the Egg Products Inspection Act. A couple of those egg farmers saddled up. There were a whole lot more that didn't because they were scared and threatened and intimidated. And I don't know if that's political correctness so much as what I was saying about political precaution, that it dictates the terms where if you don't go along to get along, you're eviscerated. I think that's unfortunate. The second thing I would say, and again, I don't know if you can, I think in my mind I can directly link, political precaution, political correctness with this, but agriculture has allowed itself to become fragmented with different labels. Socially disadvantaged, small, beginner, young, organic, natural, heavenly, almost heavenly is my case. I would like to see us in the next administration and the next Congress, especially in the next Farm Bill, give some thought and see if we might not be able to just be farmers, be agriculture. I grew up on 178 acres right on the Indiana border. I don't ever remember, I guess my parents were I don't know, we have 1,400 acres. Is that large? Today I don't feel like it's large, so are we small? My uncles each farmed about 500 acres. One raised hogs, the other raised cattle. 500 acres, that might be small, right? And, you know, there were farmers all around us whose kids went into the business, took over the operations, farmed. It wasn't easy. Come on. This was back during, you know, I remember my uncle coming in my grandma's house saying, corn hit 250 today. And kids were going into the business. I know it's tough. I don't understand sometimes, though, why we fragment ourselves, differentiate ourselves. When in fact, I think farmers and agriculture that I grew up with, we were farmers. We lived in the country. We didn't walk around with different monikers and euphemisms.
Let's give Tyson Redpath a round of applause. I think a really great